Welcome to Founder Tactics, a podcast about entrepreneurs and the communities that shape their journey. I am your host, Julia Lucidi. Today's episode was recorded live at the Fort Lauderdale Tech Meetup with Skaya, the founder of Basepaws, a Shark Tank success case, who is now leading AniVC, and Miriam Altman-Reyes, founder of Kinvolved, successfully acquired by PowerSchool, and now leads Brass Ring Ventures. Both founders turned funders built and exited venture-backed companies through very different industries, strategies, and acquisition paths. In this episode, we break down how they built their MVPs, validated product market fit, scaled through uncertainty, and navigated acquisition negotiations. Now on the investor side, Anna and Miriam share practical insights from both perspectives, founder and funder. Before we get started, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on whichever platform you're listening to us on now. Now let's dive in. All right, ladies, welcome. Thank you so much for coming, for driving all the way from Miami and South Miami, which is quite a hike, to be here with us this evening. Thrilled to be here.
Yeah. Let's get going.
Let's get going. So I intentionally didn't lead your introductions because I would love for you each to share a little bit about your background and what you have done that has led you to be here today. Please don't be shy. Share as much as you want. So
I can start.
Okay.
Hi, everybody. It's so great to be here. I am Skaya. I'm a founder turned funder. I'll talk about the founder part first and then the funder part. So I've had 4 companies, 2 quite successful, 2 absolutely unsuccessful. The most recent company was acquired about 2.5 years ago. The company was named Basepaws. In 2016, I founded it at Singularity University, a think tank kind of similar to a place like this, if you guys are familiar with it. And I founded it by watching another startup founder talk about her company. Do you guys know 23andMe? Have you guys heard of that company before? The CEO, Anne, was on stage just like me talking about 23andMe. And she was walking on stage and she was just talking about how successful a company was. This was 2016, so it was at the heydays. And she said, you know what? I have 2 cats at home. Someone should build a company called 23andMeow. And everybody in the audience laughed. And I went home that night and I bought the URL 23andmeow.com because I thought it was brilliant. It was so obvious to me. DNA testing for animals. Why aren't we doing it? Plus that name. Come on. Renamed it Basepaws. And right before the pandemic in late 2019, similar to Mike over here, I was on Shark Tank and walked away with a pretty big deal and with a pretty big shark. You guys all know our Florida local, Mr. Wonderful. Mr. Wonderful invested in Basepaws. I was actually on the show 3 times. Mr. Wonderful keeps talking about how I'm his favorite deal. I'm by far his most profitable deal. It was a really good deal for him and a good deal for my investors when the company was exited 3 years ago. I can't really talk about the number because I'm under NDA, but I can share that Mr. Wonderful made 25x his investment and he's very, very happy about it. I came to South Florida during the acquisition and would love to talk to you guys about geographically where it makes sense to build a company. Absolutely here in Florida. Like, what an amazing center. I completely support the work that you guys are doing here. And tax-wise and a bunch of other resources-wise, Florida is the place to be. Now I'm an investor. I'm investing exclusively in animal health and pet startups. I run a fund called AniVC, and we've done some really amazing investments this year. I support this idea that pets are part of our family, and innovation in animal health is just a few steps ahead of the innovation that we have in pet health as well. I'll stop here and then pass it on to Miriam.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Miriam Altman-Reyes. Nice to be here. Thank you, Julia, for having me. And I was just telling Anna that she was on the first panel that I had this year in 2025 in January, and now she's the last panel that I'm on as we close out the year. So it's kind of a nice full circle moment. So my background, I actually started my career in New York City in 2008 as a teacher. I did a program called Teach for America, which some of you may be familiar with. Right out of college, I moved to New York. I became a teacher in New York City Public High School. And even though I went through the public high school system myself, I was really astounded by some of the really kind of baseline challenges that our education system is facing at broad scale. And the thing that really stuck with me was I couldn't figure out where my students were. Half of my students on any given day would be late to school, they would be absent. And of course, just like anything in life, if you don't show up, right? I think like someone said, like 80% of life is showing up. It's very hard to be successful. And so I was kind of banging my head against a wall trying to figure out what do I do to get these kids to come to school? Why are they missing school? What's going on? So I found out that parents often actually didn't have any idea that their kids were missing class because the systems that we had were really broken. Parents were not receiving phone calls home, or they were receiving phone calls that went to our voicemail, and they, were texting because they worked 3 or 4 jobs at a time. They weren't translated. They just didn't even have the number in the system. At the same time, teachers didn't have access to the attendance data. I was sort of guessing this kid has been gone this many days this month. I like there's an attendance problem or an absenteeism problem here, but I really didn't have the information at my fingertips to be as actionable as I want it to be. So definitely uncovered a big problem in the classroom. Left the classroom actually to pursue a master's at NYU's policy school, Wagner. Entered thinking I was going to start a school, and within the first like 2 weeks of the program, ended up starting an EdTech company, which was called Kinvolved. And so we built a platform and a suite of software that we sold to K-12 schools and districts across the United States that aim to solve absenteeism by providing better access to data to educators and administrators and parents, while also facilitating better positive two-way communication between school and home. So led the company from, of course, an idea through an eventual exit in early 2022, which is also at the time that I came down here to Florida. It was a confluence of sort of factors, but the exit was part of it. Um, we sold to a company called PowerSchool, which is the largest, then publicly traded, since have gone private as of last year, education SaaS company in North America. They're a Vista-backed company. And I was there for about a year and a half, intentionally stepped away from my own business line for the most part. My co-founder stayed very deeply involved, but I couldn't handle not being in control of the decisions day to day. And so I was like, I am just going to do something different. And I really like tried to use that opportunity as much as I could to learn a lot about what it's like to work in a large publicly traded company with thousands of employees, what it's like to, what they look for in startups in terms of partnerships and acquisitions outside of my own personal experience, how they interoperate, like politics, et cetera. And then also just like taking a step back and understanding the market much more broadly, because PowerSchool has like 30 products that they sell from K-12 to higher ed and beyond. So I was in charge of launching new products. 5 products we launched in about a year or so that I was in that role. But I really was like missing being closer to the ground and closer to the impact and to the startup scene. So I started Brasswing Ventures about 2.5 years ago, initially with what we call a growth studio. So essentially with that, I've been able to bring back together about 6 members of my former team, many of whom have been through multiple exits across the entire sector. And we take a very hands-on role to supporting founders in advisory and fractional executive capacity. So we really kind of built out that muscle first. And then we started investing as well. We just are in the process of raising our first fund. We just did our first close last Friday. So we're going to start investing out of the fund. Thank you. In early 2026. And that'll build on some of the angel investments that I've been making. And I'll stop there.
So before we dive into your stories and journey, why Miami? Why is South Florida a great place to build a business?
Well, I talked a little bit about it. I mean, the obvious one, of course, is taxes. Um, and a lot of hands went up telling me that you guys are all building businesses. I really hope you have really good legal and accounting support, and that legal support got you started off correctly. And you guys have all done QSBS, right? You guys have all done 83B elections. Great. Um, QSBS is a law, a federal law, but it does work different state by state, and it allows you at exit to walk away with a lot of the money that you get during the exit without paying a lot of the taxes. And it's because you, as a founder, are such a special person in our country, that our country really tries to support you. Those things are very, very important when you're starting to run a company. And Florida as a state just does a really good job at supporting founders. So number one is taxes. I mean, obviously, like all the other amazing things around Florida. What has happened post COVID is that we have seen an influx of people from other states, people that are coming here with backgrounds in tech, in my case, in backgrounds in biotech. Perhaps people like that have not, called Florida home before, but they're definitely doing it now. I live in Miami and I definitely see that. I love attending events like this in Miami and meeting so many other founders that are not Florida natives that are here for the exact same reasons that I'm here. And I only see it continuing, right? I only see more and more people moving here, seeing the value in this and creating communities like this.
Yeah, for me, it was sort of a confluence of factors. It was the exit and tax reasons, just like Anna said. My husband, who's actually that guy right there in the middle of the second row, also got a job. Actually, as we were on our way down here, we were thinking maybe it'd be temporary, and he got a job, and we ended up putting down roots here. And then you enjoy the weather, and it's like I can never go back full time to the cold north. But similarly, like I think it almost felt like to me we're in a class of people who kind of migrated down around the same time. And I know like some of the native Miamians and Floridians like don't love all of the influx of people, but for us, or for me at least, a lot of times when I go to events and such, like it almost feels like you're in a transfer class in college or something, right? Like people are coming from different places around the same time, and everyone's very open to making new connections and building a new community network. I've really, really enjoyed that. And I think, Miami in particular, and maybe Fort Lauderdale as well, is really making some investments and trying to build out the ecosystem more. And I appreciate that quite a bit. I also know that, we all know, I'm sure, that you don't have to be confined to the physical talent that's here either, right? We want to bring people here, but you also have the opportunity, like Joelle and I are the only people here in South Florida on our team, for example. We have a couple of founders who are based here, but we have founders all over the country, not even just in New York, and team members that are in other areas as well. And that's, possible. So
That's great. No, thank you for sharing. Let's dive in a little bit into the origin and validation of the companies, and then we'll kind of progress chronologically into your transition into funding. But in the beginning, when you were first starting, how did you validate the problem that you wanted to solve, that it was actually real? And what did those early customer conversations or potential customer conversations look like?
So, that elusive product market fit, not that I work with startups so closely, it's one of the conversations I think I have in my sleep. How do you get to product market fit? So, Basepaws, aka 23 and Meow, got to product market fit by talking to every single customer that bought this DNA test from me. My phone number is still connected to Basepaws 10 years in. You can find it on Google. So if you are someone that bought a kit from me in 2021 and you're not happy, I will get that. I still get those phone calls and I've gotten them for years. I've never changed that number. I wanted to speak to every single customer that was coming through in those early days because that is the only way for me to know in those early days if I was building something that people wanted. Um, I was not able to, I didn't raise money until maybe 6 months into the beginning of the company. We had zero money for any kinds of testing. Now there's these amazing testing websites where for like $50, you can write a bunch of questions and send them out and you'll get answers almost immediately. And I hope you guys are all doing testing that way. Back in 2016, I didn't have that. So what I would do, I was at the NASA Ames campus in Silicon Valley where Singularity University was. I would go to the Starbucks in Mountain View. I would sit at the Starbucks in Mountain View and I would ask you if you had a cat. It was as simple as that. I would sit there, I would work. People will walk in. Do you have a cat? Do you have a cat? Do you have two cats? Do you have a litter box? What kind of litter box? Can I buy you a coffee? Let me tell you, people love talking about their pets. So this was like not hard at all. And it was 3 months of trying to figure out what people wanted if they wanted a DNA test for their cat. Like, come on, like you're probably thinking to yourself, like a little bit of a stupid idea, right? It's okay. Everybody said that. Mr. Wonderful has called me personally stupid and the idea stupid, like lots of times. It is just one of those things that I completely believed in. Now it seems super obvious to you, right? Like your dogs, don't you want to know what breed your dog is? Like, don't you want to know if your breeder, that $5,000 cat that you just bought, like making sure it's exactly Maine Coon? Obviously, for $100, you're gonna do that. Back then, it took a while. Product market fit for me was just very personal. And if you're building a startup, it has to be very personal to you. If you're building a SaaS company, you just signed your first B2B client. I hope you're in their offices. I hope you're meeting the people that are using the software, because that is the only way to know if this stuff is working and if people actually want it.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of highlighted a bit my entry point into the problem, personal experience, right? My experience in the classroom. I kind of like think of my MVP a little bit as just like using this platform to email parents. I realized parents didn't have emails a lot of the time or they didn't check them. So I just started collecting their phone numbers and texting them and figuring out how to kind of incentivize getting kids to come to school. I left the classroom, like I said, thinking I was going to start a school. And then I quickly pivoted to starting the EdTech company because there was something called a policy challenge, basically a business plan challenge. And so one of my classmates who became my co-founder and I decided to enter into this challenge. You had to have a problem. My problem was absenteeism, and then be building a solution. And what I think is really important for founders with lived experience, which is what we look for at Brass Ring, right? Like, especially in the future of learning and work sectors, which is what we invest in. I really believe, and the data shows that having lived experience makes you more likely to be successful. But you can't just rely on your personal experience. You have to actually validate with research and talk to prospective, customers and users, right? So when I went to grad school, I finally had the chance to like look up after being like in the classroom, which was really intense for a few years, and had an opportunity to validate my personal experience with research. And it showed that in New York City, where the business was formed, more than 250,000 kids were chronically absent every school year. And when you're chronically absent, which means you're just missing on average 2 days of school per month, the likelihood that you will drop out of high school is dramatically higher. And people weren't really talking about this at the time, but there was early research to really prove this out. So the data showed that. It also showed that there was a massive national problem about 15%, I think it was. And unfortunately, numbers have grown since then of students in K 12 were chronically absent. So there was a big problem and nobody was really talking about it. Nobody was really solving it. So there was obviously an opportunity. So we personal experience, then validated with, public research. Then I was part of an accelerator program at NYU between the summer that I graduated and then went out into the real world and started this business full time. And it was a 10-week program, and we had to do customer discovery. We had to talk to 10 customers, users, sometimes you don't even know at that stage who your customer is, but 10 people a week and actually just listen, ask them questions, not present them with an idea or prototype, but just ask them, what are your pain points? What are your problems? Validate your assumptions or invalidate them, and then identify the patterns. And so through that process, we were able to really identify like our initial, what is it that we're actually building? And then, consistently customer feedback always, I completely agree with Anna. You've got to be talking with your customers. You've got to be hearing what their challenges are, also what they love about the solution, the product, and that should never end, no matter if you're a startup, in my opinion, or a publicly traded company. Otherwise, the company won't continue to exist.
That's so good. And to always stay in the weeds and connected and not too high level and strategic, right? Being connected to your user is so important. At what moment did you realize you had reached product market fit and thought, wow, okay, I really need to focus on scaling this?
I think that we had just applied. So this was like 2019. I applied to YC 4 times. I never got in. I applied with 4 different co-founders. I never even had a co-founder, but they like it when you have one. Plus, I'm a girl, so I had to just pull in different engineers every time. It was a different engineer every time, and never got in. I applied to Shark Tank the first time, did not get in, and then like early 2019, um, I get in. I get a call back, and they asked me to do like 17 videos with my cat over a green screen. My cat doing this, my cat doing this, my cat doing this. But ultimately, I progressed. And I got on the show. I did the show, and it just clicked for the whole world. There's DNA tests and there are cats, and you can do them together. And it wasn't until and that's why I love Shark Tank. I help companies get on the show. Just I do it for fun. If you're ever thinking about getting on Shark Tank, talk to Dr. Mike, or talk to me. But it's one of those things I really love doing, and I've gotten lots of companies on Shark Tank. But there is nothing like that kind of exposure. And the minute that that segment hit, that's it. We had product market fit. People just got it. Sometimes you just need that escape velocity. And while I knew that people liked it, I knew that we were going to make a difference. I knew that the data that we got was useful for pharma companies. And I definitely knew you as the pet parent for $100, you really wanted to know if your cat that you love, that's a part of your home, that sleeps on your bed, that eats your food, that cat is a pedigree cat, or if that cat's going to have diabetes later on in life. Or I don't know if you guys, has anyone here done a 23andMe test for yourselves? I know they're kind of a dead unicorn or whatever they are now, but back then it was the most amazing thing, right? You spit into a test tube, and in 3 weeks they tell you where you're from and if you have genetic diseases. It's one of those miracle products. So it wasn't really until I think we've had the product working for at least a year, and it wasn't until we got on the show and we got investments from the people that we got investments from. It wasn't until then that it just exploded. And then COVID, and then all of us were stuck at home with our pets, and we all wanted to know what they were. So those two things together brought that escape velocity that caused us to be successful.
Yeah, I was trying to think because I don't know if there's a moment, but maybe there was. So we started in New York, because of my proximity to the school system there. We started selling in New York City public schools. I didn't know at the time that New York is the hardest public school system to sell into. It's really different selling to New York schools than it is to sell nationally. The whole procurement process is entirely different. Decision making is different, budgeting is different, et cetera. But for better or worse, we started in New York. Our first year, we did a pilot with the school. They said they were willing to pay the next year. And then just by word of mouth, the product started to spread. People in New York, a lot of schools share the same campus. So there's very tight proximity and collaboration among school leaders. And so people just sort of organically started hearing about the product and reached out to us and wanted to utilize it. So we went from, I think, one school to 20 schools. And then we went from 20 to 40. And then we went from 40 to about 125 in the span of about 2.5 years from that first pilot. And they're all New York City schools. And it was primarily, there's a little bit of outbound, but it was really primarily kind of inbound interest. I think that coupled with high retention rates showed me that there's product market fit, right? School leaders were willing to pay for a solution. It was working. Also, we actually attendance data is one of those things that's publicly available. So you can actually validate if you're improving attendance, right? Or having an impact on a school's attendance rate, which we were seeing. And then we retained more than 90 to 95% of our customers year over year up until even our acquisition. When we started selling then to we got outside of New York. That was really a strategic point where I remember sitting with our team and asking do we want to New York City has 2,000 schools. It's a huge district, right? We could make a really nice business by continuing to stay focused in New York, but there's a big world out there. Do we want to take that leap and try to figure out if so, how we can sell and solve problems for rural Tennessee districts and LA Unified and Miami-Dade County, et cetera. And so we decided to do that. And that was a whole new process, even 3 or 4 years into the business. It almost felt like starting from scratch, even though the product was the same. The pain point was pretty much the same. The pricing that people were willing to pay was entirely different. The way that you sell the products entirely different. Even the way that we integrated systems was entirely different in New York and elsewhere. And so we actually ended up hiring separate teams to manage New York. We had a slightly separate product for New York. Again, separate pricing and packaging. We would have New York and then national. So I think, again, similar process to when we started seeing that kind of word of mouth growth and that high retention in New York. That was the first moment. And then we started to see that nationally. That was kind of the second point.
No, that's great. Thank you so much for sharing. I know that advisors played a fundamental role in the growth of your company and the growth of each of you as entrepreneurs. And you have to be really intentional about finding the right advisors. They don't just, come to your doorstep. You have to find those profiles and understand what your company needs. How did you go about finding the right advisors and how did you reach them? What value did they add?
So, advisors played an incredibly important role for me as a first time founder and CEO. And it's actually extremely influential into like our model as a VC now at Brass Ring, which is a little bit different than other models. I'll explain in a moment. I think like early on, I lucked out maybe a little bit with some of my advisors, finding us or somehow we kind of connected to each other. And it was just like organic. It ended up working out and there was like a mutual trust that was built, value add. I didn't feel like they were trying to, I felt like they really were trying to coach me and advise me and not like push me in one direction or another, even though they were also investors, which sometimes can be a little bit tricky. So we ended up like I had at the time that our company was acquired, we had a board of my co-founder and me, and then three other board members who were all investors, but they were all like advisors and all had been through exits. Either they'd been founders who had exited their own companies in our or related sectors, or they had been on like executive teams through an exit. And so they really uniquely understood where to push, where to step back, how to be helpful in facilitating my growth, and not like the traditional just negative experience that sometimes founders have with investors just like pushing the company in a certain direction when they've never actually sat in the founder seat. And I appreciate it at the time, but I didn't appreciate it nearly as much as I did when after our exit, I started talking with, dozens of founders. And I realized that my experience was so unique that I had those people who were in my orbit, who I could call at any time, who were willing to have a standing biweekly meeting with me and really like help from everything strategic to in the weeds. That was absolutely the exception and not the norm, particularly for underrepresented founders, women, people of color, which naturally I kind of gravitate towards supporting. And so I wanted to replicate that type of support that I had as a founder for the next generation of founders. And so that's sort of like the impetus behind Brass Ring Ventures, the idea of facilitating the growth and development of founders, helping them reach for the brass ring, if you've ever heard that analogy, like constantly improving, leveling up. And so that's why I brought it back together like my former team members and we're, active operators. We've been through, in some cases, some of our team have been through like 4 exits. And we know what it's like to be in the shoes of founders. We know where to push. We also know where to like let founders figure things out on their own because sometimes you just got to like make your own mistakes, right? And that's really our model. And so that's why we started with this growth studio through which we provide that support before we even started raising for, a fund. And that's kind of our structure.
I see that Miriam is really passionate about this question and about advisors. I'm also really passionate about it. It's one of my favorite topics to talk about if I'm ever on a panel, just because you need to have advisors. If you're building a company, just think these are people that are like slightly past their career. They've all made tons of money. And all they want to do is go to dinner parties and talk about the companies they're advising. That's all they care about. They would love, love, love to be there for you. They would love to support you. And at the end of the day, you're giving them like 0.1 to 0.5% of equity vested over 4 years or however many years. And so they're not costing you a lot. They're probably the best. Like you said, you got lucky. I also thought I got lucky, but not I don't think we got lucky. I think we just got the advisors, and you can also get lucky. Go on LinkedIn. Almost all my advisors came from LinkedIn or from other advisors. I just cold LinkedIn so many people, like C-suite executives at like Nestle Purina, Hills Colgate, people that sold companies, other founders that came before me. If I didn't know them or I didn't know someone that knew them, I would just email them or cold LinkedIn them and found them and brought them on board. And I popped them in my deck and they looked so good because they're all former executives. And I called them up and they love talking to me because I'm building something new and they're just sitting in their lake house, not doing much, you know? And the best thing is to ask for advice. Ask for advice if you want money. And if just that's how it is. All of the advisors that I brought on board at some point, of course, I asked them, would you invest? Do you know someone that would invest? And probably half of my round. I mean, I never really had rounds. I don't know about you, Miriam, but like Basepaws raised, we exited close to 9 figures and we only raised less than $5 million. So for the 8 years that I had the company, I was consistently raising. There was never like, I don't know, this whole thing, you guys do rounds. Like I never had rounds. We just had like continuous investing, just the terms changed a little bit. But as I needed money, I would first go to my advisors and ask them to connect me with their networks because they've got great networks. So I love advisors. They are the free team that sits behind you. They've done this before and they're working for you. It's amazing. This whole ecosystem of startups, I think it only works. It only works. There's only acquisitions if there's big advisory board standing behind you. So I had a veterinary advisory board. I had a regular advisory board. I had a marketing advisory board. Gosh, I would have had like, I don't know, going to the bathroom advisory board. Like, listen, there's so many ways to engage people to help you. I think that's one of my biggest superpowers is that I ask for help and I have no problem doing it. So asking for help and building these advisory boards, I don't think you can do it without them.
Is there a significant inflection point in your company where your advisors or your board played a really important role?
Yes, our exit. Like,
Yes, our exit.
yeah. And I would just second what Anna just said. I talked about our board, like our board of directors, which was, my co-founders and 3 people. But what I didn't mention was we had a customer advisory board, we had a district level advisory board, and we had a school customer advisory board, 2 different things, and they were incredibly helpful. And we offered some of them equity, some of them got cash, etc. And then we also had a broader advisory board from whom we pulled the board of directors, actually. So it was a really nice, like low stakes way to get to know people and see how they interact with each other before inviting people to join the board where there's a lot more responsibility and also a lot more at stake. So just something strategically I always recommend to founders. Um, Inflection point. So our exit, the way our exit came about was that we were not looking to be acquired. It was, pandemic was slowly, I guess, coming to an end ish, sort of. It was still happening, but um, we were planning to raise another round of financing, and so I was on the market, just starting our fundraising round, and we got approached by PowerSchool around like September 2021. They'd gone public. They did one acquisition before they acquired us. It really, like, I really had it in me to keep growing the business, and I was excited about it. Um, but it, as I, in part through our board and advisors, got to understand like the opportunity and the risks as well of not pursuing the investment. Basically, like what I did was create a set of criteria. And it's like, if we can hit this, then I think it makes sense to pursue the acquisition. If we don't hit this criteria, then we don't. They helped me figure out those criteria where they played a, like I said, a facilitating role. Like they would join meetings when I wanted them to be present, to be like a second set of ears to listen in or to ask questions that maybe I wouldn't think to ask, or to elevate the credibility, even though I feel like I should be credible enough, right? Like, especially as female founders, sometimes it's helpful to have other people in the room, right? Um, but they, and they would help me think through just the process, like evaluating, do we even pursue the investment? That was part one. Didn't ever tell me you should or shouldn't do this, just guided me to make the decision on my own. When I decided, yes, we're going to do this, then they were, one in particular, but all of them were very helpful in just coaching me through like the tactics. Like, how we didn't hire a banker because we were going to either be acquired by this
We didn't
company or
either.
we were going to not be acquired at all. Um, and so I had to learn in real time, having never done anything like this, how to negotiate with a publicly traded company to sell my business, right? And get an advantageous outcome for everyone. We had a really
We had a
successful,
really good lawyer. Did you
we
have a good
did, we had a
lawyer?
very good lawyer, also that. But I couldn't have done that by myself. There's no chance. I had a colleague who's now my partner in my fund, and then my board members. And they were, yeah, I mean, that was the most critical inflection point.
I mean, she just told my story. I have like a very, very similar story. Someone who is now an advisor for my fund. So very similar story to you. And your advisors, again, I just want to emphasize these are people who you're not paying like the big bucks, right? They're taking a little bit of equity, the equity vests, and they're just helping you. And listen, when things are getting close to M&A, this is where like they feel good. This is the part that they all love because they've probably gone through it. So very similarly to you, I had one advisor that is now part of my fund as well, and also one board member. And the advisor introduced me to the acquirer. We were acquired by Zoetis, which is former Pfizer Animal Health, the largest animal health company in the world. I have um, I have known the CEO for years. The CEO is an incredible Fortune 500 CEO, but I don't know. my balls weren't big enough. I just didn't go up to her and I didn't shake her hand and say, I wanted you to acquire me. And this guy just walked into the room and said, you should acquire this company. And I don't know, I just didn't feel confident. I didn't feel ready like you. I didn't really know if I wanted to sell. I kept going back and forth. And my advisor just did that step for me. And she turned around and she said, yeah, we're interested. And I don't think I would have ever gotten the acquisition that I got. I don't think I would have ever even exited at the time that I did, which was the best time for me to exit my company without that one conversation. I always say, like, I mean, I hope we'll talk a little bit about acquisition. I'd love to share a bit more, but for me,
Let's do it now.
okay, for me, here's what I was advised by an advisor about 4 or 5 years before I exited, and it all turned out to be true. He had like a crystal ball. Okay, so he said, open up an Excel and write down the companies in your industry, including P firms, but mostly the strategics that could acquire you. For Basepaws, it was Zoetis Pharma, it was Purina Nestle, it was Mars, it was all of these huge conglomerates that were buying up pet companies. I had maybe a list of 10. This person said, okay, go and find all the C-level executives and all the business development people and add them to your Excel. Go stalk them on LinkedIn. Go find out where they speak, which conferences they go to, which booths they're at, and go meet them in person. And for 2 years, I did that. It was like I would sneak into conferences because I obviously didn't have any money to pay for these conferences, but I would walk in there and I would find these huge booths. And I would sit around until an executive would pop in, and I would go up there and say, hi, I'm Anna Skaya on Basepaws. Did that for 2 years, basically. I mean, had a great time, right? But got to know the executives at these companies. And at that point, like, Basepaws was growing and those relationships were kind of building. I mean, they were not going to have lunch with me, but they knew my name and they knew who I was. And then I started sending them emails. It was really great to meet you, and it was really great to see you. And at some point, those relationships became a little bit more strategic. So we'd run some pilots. So we'd run pilots with all these strategics, and in the hopes, I mean, everyone runs pilots, but in the hopes that maybe this company will either invest or acquire. And then when the time came for me to, well, I didn't do it, but my advisor did. He basically stormed in this room virtually and said, these guys are raising around, but you guys should consider acquiring them. The executives in these companies knew who I was. And the number one lesson for me after going through an acquisition, it was a super successful acquisition, was that people acquire people. I had no idea. I really thought I had to get a product better. I really thought I had to get a fit better with their R&D teams. I was going down the rabbit hole. No, it's the CEO of the company has to like you. The business development team has to like you. It's people acquiring people. So if you're building a company and you kind of have an idea that you want to exit it, which is why you're building the company, right? Have an idea already now who the strategics in your industry are who will buy you. Make a list of them. Have a list of them. Have a list of the executives and the biz dev people. Biz dev is who in the big strategic company actually does the acquisitions. Have a list of them and go meet them. Figure out on LinkedIn where they hang out, which conferences they go to, which events they go and meet them. Because when the time comes for you to get acquired, hopefully in the next few years, when that email comes their way, oh, let's have a meeting, they know who you are. I honestly think at the end of the day, that's really what makes an acquisition happen.
I think I approached the acquisition process and just like relationship building a little bit differently. For me, and this is how I advise founders now, and it might be an industry thing. For me, it was like, you know, I would get a lot of inbound over time, maybe about halfway through the life cycle of a company. And in K-12 EdTech, a company takes a long time to build. So it was about an 8.5-year journey. I did not build this company, as you can probably guess from my background, with any thoughts around an exit. I was trying to solve a pain point that I'd seen in the classroom. I validated there was a market to build something. Like, I was excited about the blocks of building the business. I started thinking a little bit about acquisition, maybe around like year 3 or 4, but just like literally who are the names of people maybe that we might be acquired by. And I would put it in the deck and I was trying to fundraise, but it wasn't like something I was seriously thinking about. I then started to, take the inbound emails that we would get. They were just like with people, analysts who would want to have a 30-minute call just to like, they're trying to understand the opportunities in the market today versus like, in the future, et cetera. And so as a rule of thumb, what I always tell founders is, as your business is growing, take at least, even if you're not actively looking, take at least 5% of your time, if you're the CEO in particular, and take those inbound calls, build the relationships, and don't pitch yourself. Really ask them questions. Understand, what are they looking for? What kind of revenue metrics do they want to see? What is their strategy for acquisition? What does it look like after the companies they acquire? Right? Like what happens to the founders? Try to understand how they approach it, what their position is. And from that experience, just spending a little bit of time each month, I built some relationships and I got to understand what are the different pathways for acquisition in this sector. And for K-12 ed tech in particular, there's a handful of strategics. We happen to like sort of not I don't want to say luck, like there was obviously a lot of strategy around it too, but they were looking for something that happened to be the biggest strategic in the sector. There's a lot of PE out there as well that does roll-ups and sort of acquisitions in our space too, and then some other types of acquisitions. But there is kind of like a defined set of opportunities for an acquisition. So I definitely got to understand what that was from having conversations with people and who the players were in those different sectors. And then when PowerSchool came to us, like I said, it put together those criteria. And I really, truly, in my heart, was not sure if I was going to pursue the acquisition. And that was a great mentality to have when you're going into a negotiation, right? Like we were profitable. We had raised some funding, but around the same amount, like about 5 million, a little bit less even. And some of that was even grant funding, not dilutive. So, we weren't like we had some venture backing, but we weren't like a massive venture backed company like some of our competitors. Um, that actually made us incredibly appealing for an acquisition because they didn't have to meet the valuations that some of our competitors, investors had set to be able to have a successful, to acquire our business. Just as a side note, I didn't fully appreciate that until later. Um, and yeah, so then when they, came to us, I was really like, okay, I want the things that I wanted to see, which are, I think, applicable across any sector where, I want to make sure that our customers are taken care of and that the impact and opportunity for expansion is accelerated by pursuing this acquisition rather than going it on our own. Yes, check that box. The next thing that I wanted to know was that my team was going to be taken care of. They're going to bring our whole team over. They were going to position them in different spots, right, across the company. Check that box. My investors are going to get a successful return, which requires you to obviously like negotiate, a deal opportunity, right, and evaluation, um, multiple that is effective, which is much easier again if you're not in a position of desperation, right, to get that multiple that you want. And then the founders were going to be taken care of. And once all those boxes were checked, and then I also had to think about if we don't pursue this acquisition, the timing in 2021 was very good for acquisitions in general for founders, but especially in my sector, it's really tanked since then. But secondly, they made it clear to us that if they didn't acquire us, they were going to acquire somebody else, and then we'd have to compete against them. And I was like, I really don't know if that is something I want to be doing. I'd rather just, join them rather than beat them in this particular case. So that's what we did.
I'm tempted to go deeper into this topic, but I might like overextend our time. So I'm going to jump into a different subject and maybe it'll come up in the Q&A and we can go a little bit deeper or we can bring it up too. So teams are really important for success. Having a team that complements your skills, that has the same passion. How did you build your team, especially early on when you were still working on validating and figuring out how you're going to scale and be successful?
I'm just thinking back to those early days. I started Basepaws with a co-founder. Unfortunately, about 12 months in, I had to send that co-founder a cease and desist letter. So that relationship unfortunately didn't work out. Co-founder disputes are, I think the it's about the same as divorces, like 50% of all startups. If they have a co-founder, the co-founder leaves within, I think, 2 years. Um, Man, co-founders are so hard because you don't want to do this alone, right? You're starting this thing by yourself and you don't want to do it alone. But like around the 18-month mark, you wish you were alone, right? You like you're now kind of doing it and it's kind of working and the two co-founders very often have problems. So I'd love to hear your story. My story was like that 50% of it didn't work out. If I am to do it again, I really think, and this is just a personal preference, I would do it alone because it's really, really hard, 5, 6, 7 years in, and this is how long you're going to be doing this, to be doing this with the same person and that your vision is aligned this whole time. I would love to hear. I think you and your co-founder did it together, right? Yes, great. So you'll get two different answers, which is really great. Um, the team. So that relationship didn't work, but then I had like such a fire under me to try to get more help when the scientist in the relationship, and I was building a biotech company, wasn't in the room anymore. And it made me hustle really, really hard. I went to every meetup. I really posted out there that I really needed a scientist, and I got someone really, really good. And we keep using the word lucky, but I think in this case, I really got lucky. I got lucky with a really phenomenal person that worked with me until the end, until the acquisition. Um, wow, those early days, like my sister licked the envelopes that had the cat hair that are, we would strip the cat in those first days. So my sister did that job. My husband would drive the kits, like big boxes or black bags of these DNA kits, to the UPS every single day. My stepsister would let me borrow her cat. So it was definitely a family business. It was a family business until the very end. My one of my sisters still worked there until the very, very end. So I think that if you have family, they should be helping you. Starting a company is really hard, and if you have someone at home that can help you, I think that's a really good one. So that's just one person's opinion of how to do it based on my experience. Um, I think that at some point, about I think 2 years in, if you've survived to this point, then you're the founder and it's your vision and you don't have to put your elbows out to try to compete with somebody else's vision. I think that is a good place to be. um, Early on, you're working with somebody and you guys are both working for equity. It's really hard to get a salary early on. Hopefully you're able to figure that out, and there's lots of ways to do it. Remember that equity is something that is cheap early on, but becomes very expensive later. Don't just throw it out left, right, and center. Make sure you're giving it out to people that really, really deserve it. And that's really that's what you have early on. So if you can find someone who loves your idea, who's willing to work with you, and who's willing to work for equity, those are your people. Those are your people.
Um, a great team is incredibly important. And I would, again, not to harp on the advisor thing, but I would say like your team includes potentially co-founders, right? But also a leadership team and, more on the ground people as you grow your business as well. And all of those need to be really effective and successful. Your board is also, in my opinion, should be team members too, if they're really effective in their own way. I did have a co-founder. We did last all the way through to the exit and we got through it, but, and everyone did well, but, it took a toll. Like, it was almost a 10-year journey from, like, the time that we met in grad school to the time that we both left the company that acquired us around the same time, about a month apart. And, it was hard at times. So, it's co-founder dynamics can be very helpful to have a second person who's, like, in the trenches, who's not getting paid a lot either, right? Who's, like, putting their all into it, but also sometimes, people grow at different paces and their skill sets are more helpful at different times in the business. And it can be really challenging to, kind of navigate through that over time. But I also think that having, like I said, really strong leadership team is critically important. Understanding where your strengths and your existing team strengths are and where the gaps and blind spots are, and being really self-aware is one of the most important things that I look for in founders that we support and invest in. And also not trying to be everything. Like, you do need to be a generalist as a founder and wear a lot of hats 100%, but you also aren't going to be great at everything and you shouldn't necessarily learn. Like, I never learned how to be a developer. That was never going to be
Well,
my
now you have AI and that can do
I
all
know I
that
don't have to
for
do that
you.
now, right?
Guys are living in an amazing world.
Different time, absolutely.
So
Um,
lucky.
but, so having a leadership team is really important. The people that you bring into the company are really important at the junior level. And the one last thing I'll say that, like, sometimes founders don't think about right off the bat is, like, I love contractors. Like, I love not hiring full-time people and testing people, like, work to hire, test people out, both because you might not need a full-time, like, marketer or salesperson or whatever. And also gives you an opportunity to test out some of where you bring them on. So we had contractors, like, all the way through to our acquisition, many of whom we did end up hiring full time, but there's no shame in having part-time team members.
I hope this first part of the conversation has given our guests a lot to think about. I'd like to transition over to our questions and see what you have on your mind and what questions you might have for our two incredible speakers. If not, I can keep going. But if you have a question, just raise your hand, and Kellen in the back is going to bring the microphone to you. Keep your hand up.
So when you approached your list of possible buyers and start mingling with them and all that, didn't you have a little bit of a fear of them copying what you were doing and just bringing it to the market instead of just buying you?
I mean, I wasn't sharing like a confidential deck with them. I was chasing them around the conference, trying to shake their hand and say, "Hey, my name is Anna. I have this company called Basepaws. Oh, yeah, we've heard. Yeah, so we do DNA testing for animals, and we love what you're doing here at Colgate. You guys are doing amazing work for pets. Like, we'd love to stay in touch. Yeah. Stay in touch.
Because the
And like
business
three
development
times
people,
that.
business development people are usually after new ideas, new products that they should
Sure.
integrate into their line.
Listen, I'm never worried about it. Like, it is just not something I'm ever worried about. I copied all the time. Before this company, 23andMe Out, I was a founder of a group. Remember Groupon, the daily deals?
Yeah,
I
of course.
founded an exact copycat. Like, we copied down to every pixel on the website. And like, it's always about execution. I never think it's about the idea. I think we're all having the same ideas. And I'm just a better executor. I'm faster. I take more phone calls. Like, I just can't. I don't think the acquirers and different beasts. They can't do what you do. I mean, of course, sometimes you can think that they can, but I'm not worried. I can't control that. Only thing I can control is being better and building better.
I concur.
Curious about the types of companies that you invest in. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, we never talked about our funds. No.
Thank you.
Sure. I run a fund called AniVC. It's a $35 million fund. We invest exclusively in animal health and pet companies. So anything you see at your veterinarian's office, anything you see on Chewy, everything from food to diagnostics to therapeutics to toys to grooming, anything in the pet world, that's what we invest in.
Can you give some examples? Because there's some pretty cool companies in your portfolio.
Sure. We have just invested into an airline for dogs. So you know how it sucks to fly with a large dog and they have to put it down into the thing or you can't really bring it. So this airline is exclusive. It's called Retrieve Air. They were just on Shark Tank. They did phenomenally well. So airline for dogs, they're like killing it, absolutely killing it, flying all over the US with large dogs, renting airlines, airports. Like, if you have a dog, you got to check it out. We've also done this really cool company called Dog People. If you're in, it's coming to Miami next year, but think of like Soho House meets dog park. So it's like $200 a month, which is kind of crazy, but you work out of there. There's DJs, there's yoga, and it's like a huge dog park. And it's like all these super cool dogs running around playing with each other, and you just sit there working. I love both those deals, and we've done a few others. Have you guys ever heard of this company called Loyal? They do like longevity drugs for dogs, so your dogs can live longer. Isn't that awesome? But we all want that. So we've invested in a competitor to that. Thanks for asking.
We invest in what we call economic mobility, opportunity, prosperity tech. So basically, like solutions that are tech enabled, right, or tech SaaS products that are driving towards those positive outcomes, but also are going to equally drive effective financial returns. And so specifically the sectors that we invest in are future of learning and work that often intersects with health and financial inclusion, sort of fintech. But it has to be through a lens of driving those kinds of outcomes. So everything from early childhood through K-12, higher ed, alternative, post-secondary, and then even workforce. And we invest typically at the seed, which we define as roughly $1 million in ARR, just because founders like to anchor in something, but it can be a little less, it can be a little more. And then we take this very hands-on approach to help founders kind of cross the chasm. If you've ever read that book, from the seed to the Series A, and then we'll do follow on the Series A.
Hey everyone, Phil Castro here, founder at Camp. We throw amazing startup VC events around the world, similar to you. And I do have a question. It's both of you, but specifically at Anna. I want to talk about option pools for a second. With your option pool, I know that you had a co-founder that actually dropped off. I think you said 18 months in. Does that mean that he or she was not vested? And if so, did the investors make you put that back into the option pool?
Does everyone know what an option pool is? So, an option pool is a certain amount of equity that you set aside for the team. My co-founder and I, whew, I mean, you're making me think about all the sad stuff, you know.
Sorry.
Uh, but we ended up buying him out and leaving him 5%, which still made him a lot of money at the end. And that equity went back into the company. It was one of the hardest periods of my life. So this co-founder has half the company, right? You're building a company 50-50. 18 months in, they've vested, almost half of that 50%. It's in their pocket. That's it. It's their company. And you're fighting every day. And it's getting really bad.
But why is he vested if it was only 18 months? Usually it's 2 years cliff with a 4-year schedule.
It was a 1-year cliff.
Oh, that's
And
why.
and so he started getting, at 18 months, it was like almost half of that 50%, right? So he had about 22%, right? So that's a lot of equity. And if we just kick him out, which I could have just kicked him out, that 22% will always be with him, right? And there's a lot of issues with that. If you guys don't know, you'll hear about this all the time, this idea of debt equity. An investor comes to you, looks at your cap table and says, a fifth of the company is owned by some weird guy. Like, who's this guy? Oh, sorry, he doesn't work here anymore. I don't like that. I don't think that's really good for other investors. And you just get this earful. You don't want to deal with it. So we were very lucky. It took a lot of work, a lot of lawyers, but we finally were able to come up with a number that we paid over a series of years. We paid him for that. It is super, super hard to deal with founder equity split situations, as you would know since you work with startups. Do you want to answer?
I just advised a founder today on this exact same issue. He brought in a co-founder a couple of years into the journey. They split after about 2 years, just shy of 2 years, on a relatively amicable basis. But now he's like, we are talking about whether he should, try to buy back the equity. Like, how do you even do that? He's not in a position yet to get a 409A evaluation, et cetera. And so we talked about the pros and cons, a lot of which Anna just sort of highlighted in her personal experience. But I think, especially if you're in a situation where it's really like your idea and your concept and you're bringing someone in, vesting schedules are really important and helpful, and like incentivizing people, making sure that you test out that they're going to stick around, that they're the right fit as much as you can, right? I think that that's really, really valuable. I mean, I think what Anna did is exactly like industry standard, but insofar as, again, if you're bringing someone in a little bit later and you can create that structure to make sure that you don't give too much away too soon. Also with employees, also with advisors, et cetera. I think that's really
That's
prudent.
why having advisors is so important. You got to talk to people. Isn't this like a whole other world? Like, if you're not in this world, like, we're talking about these things that are so weird and esoteric and deep. Like, it's so important to have advisors. They will help you with all this.
Mhm.
Hey, my name's Asher, and I am a co-founder of a pet services platform in Israel.
Ooh. Hey, Asher. And I should
And
talk.
and then I also have a company here in Florida for digital services. So I wanted to ask you, what are some bases to have covered in addition to QSBS? I know there's PCI compliance that some startups might fall under for long term. PCI compliance is like for credit cards, taking transactions, like being covered legally and
You
stuff.
would know that more than me. Do you know? See?
I was just wondering if you know any
Maurice will talk
common
to you.
pitfalls for startup founders that are maybe good bases to have covered for long term.
I really think that QSBS is a biggie. And, like, if you guys don't know what it is, really ask me, ask anybody. It's one of those things that if you don't do it right the first time, you're kind of screwed. It's a really big one. Um,
I would say I didn't even know, I'm embarrassed to say this, but I like didn't even know that we had that set up until our acquisition. And my accountant was like, "Oh, you don't have to pay all these taxes." And it was such a surprise. And I was so happy. So, like, the point is, get really good advisors so that they will highlight for you and help you make sure that you do the things that you are not an expert in.
But also, where should you spend your tiny bit of money that you have right now? I would buy all the AI tools that you need, and I would have a good lawyer and have your data room set up correctly with all your documents perfectly outlined. Like I have a VC firm, and I have this analyst, and he just loves ripping apart a data room. It's just what they love to do. Have a data room that works well, and have a lawyer that is not expensive but is a good lawyer. And I think those to me are the most important things in QSBS.
What are the pros and cons between uh, Shark Tank and VCs? Could you give us like a quick breakdown?
Of course. So Shark Tanks are VCs, right? They're investing at a valuation that they negotiate with you on the show. Except that on the show, you got 50 cameras and bright lights. So you're ready to like drop your valuation, which a VC probably wouldn't do, right? You get on the show and you say, I'll give you 10% for 100K. And they like, haha, I'll give you 7K for your 10%. And you get flustered and you say yes. And then you lose a chunk of your company. That's the thing about Shark Tank that makes it different. You're on stage and under pressure, you're made to make a deal. With the VC, you have tons of time and you can get to know the VC and they can get to know you. But the number one thing about Shark Tank, sharks are VCs. They all have funds. They love a good deal. They want you to drop your valuation, and they want to have as big of a chunk of your company as possible. But when you get off the show, they're all trying to get you to be successful. So while they're trying to get the biggest chunk possible, if you're in their portfolio, they're super helpful, right? Kevin, I don't know how many times I've had Kevin on my Instagram live doing a live with me for like cat people. Like Kevin hates cats, and I've had him like hold a cat and pet a cat on TV and enjoy it. They do a ton of work for you, and Shark Tank as a show is for a consumer company. I can't think of anything better, right? You're blasting to the whole world your idea, and your sales just explode. We were on the show in 2019. This is 2025. Basepaws, a Shark Tank company, will forever be as we're known. It is a great thing. You know, no one really trusts a little startup, but everyone trusts Shark Tank. So that's the biggest difference.
Hey guys, so my name is Tiago. I work with Connected. We essentially help build out advisory boards for companies. I think it's really cool, the role that your advisors played in your exit, so on and so forth. So my question for any sort of like startup founder, for you guys is, when does a founder know when they should be getting board advisors? How early in the journey? When did you guys get your first advisors?
As soon as possible. Like we started getting our first advisors, like we won a bunch of competitions early on. And so we met people and they come up and talk to us. And I think our very first like advisor, we had an equity agreement. We met within the first couple of months of the company existing, and it was really great and a great starting point. Um, we had sort of like a mixture of a hodgepodge of advisors that we met at different places, right? And I would like call one for one thing and call one for another. And it wasn't like cohesive, it was still helpful. But what I wished I'd done sooner, which I did about 3 years before we sold the company, was actually create like a structured advisory board process. So we actually thought more intentionally about what are the types of people that we need, what are the roles that we want them to fill, how do we want them to interact with each other. And it didn't really take that much effort, honestly, but putting together like an intentional group, putting them on our website, actually making them work for us, getting them together on a quarterly basis just over Zoom, and having like a structured meeting set up in addition to those one-offs was incredibly helpful. And I tell founders all the time, don't delay on doing that, because it's like an extra thing in your list. Is actually incredibly helpful to get those people to work for you together.
I like that you said it's not very hard. I completely agree. It's not very hard. It's like the easiest thing you'll hear today, right? Like find people out there that you like that have done this before, and add them to your website and work with them. Like it's the most easiest thing to create an advisory board, and it's the most beneficial, and do it as early as you can. Actually, I just remembered I'm an advisor for Andrea's company. Do you agree? Am I a good advisor? Am I doing it all? Am I just talking? See, I'm walking the walk too. As early as you can, and you're gonna really enjoy it. You're gonna enjoy having these smart people around helping you.
To close us off, as you're now sitting in the seat of investors, are there some opportunities that you see in your respective markets that you think founders could start building solutions around, being that you're so deep in these worlds and seeing a lot of different business models coming your way? I'd love for you to just throw some ideas for folks that maybe they might be eager to start a business, and you're able to shed some light on what some market opportunities are.
I mean, talk about like future of learning and future of work. AI, everyone's talking about, right? Like it's totally upending everything. It's upending the way that what we're teaching kids, how we're teaching kids, how we're teaching adults, how we're educating, upskilling employees. I see a lot of companies that are taking different approaches to this with different customer segments. But I think, I haven't found one that I'm like, this is the one that's going to do it. I think there's a lot of opportunity. You just need to be really differentiated and thoughtful in your approach. But, training people to be the next sort of workforce and getting people over that hump of being nervous that AI is going to take their jobs, and like, how do you actually leverage AI, right? How do we create new jobs? I think anything in that area is really interesting to me.
Completely different. Um, who here has a dog? Who here has a cat? Okay. This is actually not normal that one gentleman has a cat. Actually, about 50-50 of people in the US have dogs and cats. However, we primarily make products for dogs because dog people are a little bit more gregarious and dogs are outside and you see them, or cats are inside. But it is a hidden market with tons of opportunity. Cat people have more money. Cat people are they have a lot less choice. There's a lot. Cats are just like underfunded, understudied, and their owners are just as well off, paying just as much money for cat care as the dog owners are for dog care. And yet, no one is building for cat people. And I'd love to see more companies out there for cats. Meow.
This has been great. Thank you so much. A round of applause for these ladies. That was another episode of Founder Tactics. Thank you so much for listening. If you'd like to get updates on new episodes, live recordings, and everything happening in our founder community, make sure to subscribe, follow, and rate the podcast. And also, you can head to foundertactics.com to learn more about our work. See you next time.